What if there's a sudden and urgent need to deploy every single aircraft from the carrier? In case of a threat, the flight deck turns into an action-packed scene straight out of a movie. Maybe the carrier is under threat and requires air defense, or maybe there's a critical mission that requires a massive air assault. Whatever the reason may be, this exercise of launching all aircraft in a sequential manner is known as an Alpha Strike. The stakes are high, and the tension is real, and the outcome will determine the fate of not just the fleet, but the entire nation. Failure is simply not an option. So how does the US Navy launch all 90 fighter jets in just a few minutes? With thousands of lives on the line, every second counts. The difference between success and failure, life and death, can hinge on the tiniest of delays. It's like a high-stakes game of Tetris, but instead of blocks, you're dealing with multi-million-dollar machines that can fly at supersonic speeds. To illustrate the importance of speed and precision when launching aircraft from US Navy carriers, it's important to note that the environment on the flight deck is very dynamic and dangerous. This is because it's a relatively small area that is constantly in motion due to the carrier's movement through the water, not to mention the unpredictable wind and sea conditions that make it so much more challenging to operate on. Taking these factors into account, it becomes highly important that the crew on board work together with great precision and coordination. It's no surprise that the launch process involves a complex choreography of activities that must be executed quickly and accurately in order to ensure that every aircraft can take off successfully while avoiding collisions or accidents on the flight deck. What is an Alpha Strike? Alpha Strike is a term used in the armed forces to describe a tactic in which a large number of weapons or military assets are directed at a single target in a concentrated and coordinated attack. The objective of an Alpha Strike is essentially to overwhelm and destroy the target quickly and decisively, typically before it even has a chance to respond. The term
How do I know when I need new tires?
Let me connect to a Toyota tire expert.
Air-to-air combat, where a group of fighter aircraft would coordinate their attacks to quickly eliminate enemy aircraft. However, the concept has since been applied to other types of military operations, including the US Navy. If you think launching a single multi-ton jet carrying a price tag of a jaw-dropping $100 million is a nerve-wracking task, then you'd well be right. But imagine repeating this process over and over again until each and every jet is off the carrier. Can you imagine the tension in the air as everyone on board frantically rushes to get their job done in the blink of an eye? So, how does the crew pull it off? Well, it goes without saying that launching a jet is a very complex and demanding task that leaves no room for error. One wrong move or a moment of hesitation could send the entire mission spiraling into disaster. Luckily, the US Navy brings its A-game into every operation. The strike group commander will typically spend a significant amount of time planning the attack, coordinating the movements and actions of various units involved, and selecting the most effective weapons and tactics for the mission. Meanwhile, intelligence sources of the US Navy would identify the target, such as an enemy ship, base, or any other facility that needs to be neutralized. Once the plan is all drawn out and the target is locked, the aircrew on board the carrier is briefed on the mission plan and their roles in the Alpha Strike. This prepares everyone on board to initiate the Alpha Strike, and what's left is practically launching all the aircraft from the flight deck in a coordinated manner. The operation begins when the helmsman steers the carrier into the wind, signaling the start of a carefully planned sequence of events. The maintenance crew springs into action, working tirelessly to ensure that each jet is mission ready, properly armed, and in perfect condition. And before you know it, the jet is transferred to the deck side, poised and ready to take off and complete its mission. But that's not all. The aircraft directors and catapult operators play a critical role in guiding the jets to their respective catapults and ensuring that they are safely locked in place. It's a race against time, and there is no room for second guessing. We'll discuss the entire process for sure, but let's put things into perspective first. Time taken to launch all aircraft. The US Navy is capable of launching all of its fighter jets from an aircraft carrier in an unimaginably short amount of time, thanks to its advanced launch systems and highly trained personnel. The exact time it takes to launch every single jet generally depends on a variety of factors, such as the number of aircraft involved and the specific launch system being used. But speaking of launch systems, let's take a closer look at them since they play a crucial role in launching these jets into the sky. One of the primary launch systems used by the US Navy is the steam-powered catapult, which uses steam pressure to accelerate the aircraft into a blazing takeoff speed in a very short distance, allowing them to launch from the carrier's flight deck quite immediately. The newer iteration of this system, the Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, otherwise known as EMALS, uses electromagnetic energy to launch aircraft, often providing greater control and flexibility. With the steam-powered catapult, though, the US Navy can launch up to 4 aircraft per minute, depending on the condition of the aircraft and the specific launch configuration. This means that a carrier with a full complement of 90 fighter jets could be launched in as little as 20 minutes. However, in practice, the launch sequence would likely be staggered to ensure safe and efficient operations. It's worth noting that in addition to the catapult launch system, it goes without saying that an Alpha Strike can be a major game changer. During the Vietnam War, the US Navy launched Operation Linebacker 2, an enormous Alpha Strike unleashing a massive attack of 129 aircraft. With time running out and suspense building, the strike was launched in just over an hour, with the first wave taking only 60 minutes to launch. This not only illustrated the true speed at which the sailors on board executed the operation, but it also showed how important an Alpha Strike could be when neutralizing a threat while out in the ocean. Challenges faced. However, even with the crew giving it their all, the US Navy stares down a host of challenges while preparing for an Alpha Strike. First and foremost, we're well aware of how every second counts on board a US Navy aircraft carrier is crucial. This often creates a sense of time pressure, especially during Alpha Strikes where swift and decisive action is a must. In addition, the complex logistics behind an Alpha Strike are not something to brush over. Coordinating such a hectic operation involves managing the movement and positioning of dozens of aircraft simultaneously, as well as the loading and arming of weapons and fuel. This is clearly not an easy task, requiring top-notch communication and meticulous planning. This can often be challenging in a noisy and fast-paced environment where equipment malfunctions or other factors can disrupt communication channels. The crew must be able to quickly adapt to changing communication conditions, such as by changing frequencies or using backup communication channels to ensure that all elements of the strike can communicate effectively. A single mistake would likely wreak havoc. Adverse weather conditions can also pose a significant challenge during an Alpha Strike. High winds, heavy rain, or rough seas can make takeoffs and landings that much more difficult and can impact accuracy of weapon systems. The crew must be prepared to adjust their operations to account for changing weather conditions, such as the launch configuration, or delaying the strike if necessary. In addition, the carrier and its aircraft are at a constant risk from enemy forces during an Alpha Strike. The crew must remain vigilant and ready to respond to threats at a moment's notice, such as by deploying defensive measures or adjusting the strike plan to avoid enemy threats. This requires a high level of situational awareness and the ability to rapidly adapt to changing circumstances, since the whole point of such a risky operation is to dismantle the threat before giving it a chance to cause damage. Let's not forget that the 90 aircraft on board need to be actively serviced and taken care of. Maintenance and repair tasks also pose a challenge during an Alpha Strike, since aircraft and weapon systems require regular maintenance and repairs to remain operational, and the crew must be able to quickly diagnose and repair any mechanical issues that arise while ensuring that each aircraft is properly maintained and ready for launch at short notice. It's worth mentioning that the aircraft carrier's maintenance crews work with remarkable speed and efficiency despite the bouldering pressure on them. They utilize highly efficient maintenance practices that prioritize getting the job done promptly and accurately. Let me ask you this. What do you think are some of the most important skills that crew members on a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier need to possess in order to execute a successful Alpha Strike? Let us know in the comments. The secret of the U.S. Navy. Now let's talk about checklists. We've all made them at some point, right? You might be wondering, why are checklists important here? Well, with so much on the line, the U.S. Navy leaves no stone unturned. They go the extra mile to make sure everything is in perfect working order, and it all comes down to one simple thing: a checklist. The pre-launch checklist is a crucial component of the U.S. Navy's aircraft launch process and plays a vital role in ensuring that every mission is executed with outstanding accuracy and attention. Before the jets take off, crew members undertake a carefully crafted checklist. The countdown to launch is fast-paced and intense, and the pre-launch checklist acts as the final line of defense against any potential issues. The crew checks the status of the jet systems, verifying fuel and weapons loads, and ensuring that the pilot is prepared for takeoff. Moreover, the U.S. Navy's aircraft carriers are equipped with turbocharged fueling and arming stations right on their decks. These stations are like pit stops in a high-speed race, where jets zoom in for speedy refueling and rearming between missions. Talk about a pit crew on steroids. These stations are the secret weapon behind the U.S. Navy's efficiency, slashing turnaround times and ensuring missions are executed with precision without wasting any time, because as we learned earlier, every second counts. What happens in case of a failed launch? A failed launch can send shockwaves through the launch process, casting a shadow on the carrier's ability to execute an Alpha Strike with precision. It's like a domino effect of setbacks that can disrupt the timing of the following launches and jeopardize the overall mission's success. It also underscores the fact that even with meticulous planning and preparation, unexpected events can occur during an Alpha Strike mission. The crew must remain vigilant and adaptable, ready to respond to any situation that arises with professionalism and skill. Effectiveness of an Alpha Strike. Despite the heaps of challenges and threats faced during an Alpha Strike, it remains one of the most effective means of succeeding in a mission out in the ocean. The effectiveness of such a complex operation depends on a number of factors, including the accuracy and precision of the weapon systems, the number of aircraft involved, and the tactical situation on the ground. Alpha Strikes can be particularly effective against heavily defended targets, such as enemy airfields, missile sites, or other naval vessels, where a concentrated and coordinated attack can overwhelm the enemy's defenses and destroy or disable key targets. In addition to their tactical effectiveness, Alpha Strikes can also have a psychological impact on the enemy, demonstrating the U.S. Navy's capability and willingness to conduct decisive offensive operations. This not only helps to degrade the enemy's morale, but it also significantly reduces their willingness to engage in further hostilities. During the Gulf War in 1991, the U.S. Alpha Strike unleashed its fury and swiftly dismantled the Iraqi air defenses. With the enemies gone, U.S. and coalition forces could freely dominate the skies without the added stress of the enemy threat. Talk about a turning point. This Alpha Strike set the stage for the liberation of Kuwait and left their enemies in fear of another Alpha Strike that could cause even more damage. Even though it appears like an easy task for the U.S. Navy, this was no child's play. The Navy had a bag of tricks up their sleeves to ensure a blazingly fast launch during the Alpha Strike. These strategic geniuses devised a plan that would make anyone's head spin. They carefully selected targets, assigned roles to each aircraft, and crafted a playbook for this mighty conquest. Not only did they keep a close eye on their fuel tanks, but also made sure the jets were pre-armed and ready for immediate takeoff. The quick thinking and swinging into action of everyone on board was just the cherry on top. Remembering that an Alpha Strike is not just a display of military might, it's a strategy used by the U.S. Navy to achieve specific objectives. Picture this. You're an enemy soldier, and suddenly you see dozens of mighty jets taking off from an aircraft carrier, heading your way. Not the most ideal situation to be in, right? The Alpha Strike is not just about the physical destruction of enemy targets, it's about the psychological impact it can have on the enemy, as discussed earlier. It's a display of military dominance that sends a clear message to the enemy that the US Navy means business. On top of that, an airstrike unleashes a game-changing advantage in the heat of battle. By taking out key enemy targets early on, the operation can disrupt the enemy's ability to mount an effective counterattack. It also provides cover for ground troops and other naval vessels, allowing them to advance without fear of enemy retaliation. All in all, an Alpha Strike is a powerful tool in the arsenal, and it's a reminder that the US Navy is always ready to defend its nation and its interests, both physically and psychologically. We now understand that an Alpha Strike is not only executed in minutes, but also causes substantial damage to enemy threats. From the breathtaking launch of fighter jets to the astounding collaboration of the crew, every detail is executed with exceptional skill and everlasting dedication. The Alpha Strike leaves an indelible impression, marking its mighty legacy, reminding us that the US Navy is second to none in its readiness to face any challenge. Have you ever experienced the thrill of witnessing a jet take off? If so, you might know the adrenaline rush it can bring. We'd love to hear about your experience in the comments below. If you're fascinated by the incredible power and technology of these warships, make sure